Today, the most advanced fighters are the development of the 5th generation. The countries that own them can be counted on the fingers of one hand. However, the superpowers are not going to rest on their laurels and are already in full swing to create the next generation of machines. Among such projects are the European Tempest, the Russian program launched in 2016, and of course the American NGAD. But few people know that in addition to it, the United States is working on a second prototype, codenamed FAXX, about which today we will talk. This is Black Widow. Let's go! So the FAXX is part of the Next Generation Air Dominance program, which we already know. What is noteworthy, unlike the FX, the initiator of the project was the Navy. The new aircraft is to replace the FA-18, which has been in service for over 40 years. Of course, so far one of the main fighters of the Navy can cope with the assigned tasks, but when confronted with a hypothetical threat from China, it will fail. This is due to the insufficient combat range of the Super Hornet, and the fact that China has a powerful ballistic missile, such as the DF-21D, which can hit the target at a distance of 1,450 kilometers. Besides, quite soon the service life of FA-18, estimated at 9,000 hours, will come to the end. Above drawings, company Boeing worked on the aircraft back in 2009. She presented his first concept of the aircraft, and later in 2013 updated it. And even though now the project is still at the initial stage, serial production is scheduled to launch in the next decade, and by 2037 to present a whole line of modern fighters. However, the situation is overshadowed by the low financing of the program, slowing down its development. How much money is allocated to the FAXX is difficult to say yet, but many sources argue that the amount significantly differs from that provided for a similar project in the Air Force. Because of the fairly limited budget, the US Navy had to squeeze. Thus, they've already refused to purchase 36 carrier-based Super Hornets in the period from 2022 to 2024, which helped save about $4.5 billion, which will now go to the design of the advanced model. Given all these financial constraints, it is not entirely clear whether the FAXX will be a brand new development, as originally envisioned, or will still be an improved version of the existing deck fighter. As for the cost of a production, it is safe to say that one FAXX will cost the US government no less than $100 million. Well, now let's take a closer look at the appearance and characteristics of our hero. The fighter is made on the tailless scheme with a lambda-shaped wing, visually reminiscent of the YF-23 Black Widow II, once lost to the Raptor. In addition, it has a front horizontal plumage, but the vertical plumage is likely to be absent. At least that was the case in the 2013 concept. The aircraft is designed with an open architecture design that will allow it to connect different systems and sensors depending on the specific mission. The project will be created in a manned version with room for a co-pilot, as well as in an unmanned version, which is the bet for modern combat. The advantage of the FAXX is the smart shells, the essence of which is the integration of sensors and electronics into the fuselage of the aircraft to increase performance while reducing drag and increasing speed and maneuverability. The main trump card of the development is the NIFC-CA, or Naval Integrated Command, which is based on situational awareness and a focus on wide-range cooperation. This means that every unit in the strike group, in the air, on the surface, or underwater, will be connected to the network through a series of data links. This technology will allow the pilot to get a clearer view of the battle space and coordinate with the rest of the team. The fighter will be able to interact quickly and coherently with equipment such as the Northrop Grumman, E-2D destroyers of the Arleigh Burke, DDG-51, Nimitz, and General R. Ford, as well as submarines. There is very little information about the propulsion system of the aircraft so far. There are assumptions that the fighter will be equipped with an engine with an adaptive cycle. The attitude of the Air Force and Navy is quite the opposite. In addition, the FAXX will have to install high-power storage due to the abundance of electronic equipment and weapons of a new type, and to maintain motion at low-speed power plants will be supplemented by electric generators. It is planned that the development will be able to reach a supersonic speed of Mach 5, which is equal to about 5,600 kilometers per hour. Its combat radius is to be around 1,000 nautical miles. That's a little over 1,850 kilometers. Its payload matches or exceeds the payload of its predecessor, i.e. at least 40,000 pounds, 18,000 kilograms. Regarding the time spent in the sky, the designers are claiming the possibility of 50 hours of flight, but only for the unmanned version. Fundamentally new will be the armament of the fighter. The fact is that the emphasis is not on speed and stealth, as it was with the machines of the last generation, and the ability to crush, or at least suppress, enemy defenses. US Navy Admiral Jonathan Greenert said, "Let's face it, if something moves fast through the air, destroys the molecules in it and puts out the heat, I don't care how cool it might be, it will be detected." But what kind of weapons will we see exactly? We're talking about a new type of laser that's supposed to defeat electronic warfare, EW. Such weapons will be able to display the homing heads of any type of missile. Another fundamentally new weapon against enemies would be the use of computer viruses capable of disabling enemy aircraft systems. Of course, no one forgot about the more familiar weapons, so the aircraft provides for the installation of missiles with an innovative guidance system, which will be impossible to shoot down according to the developers. However, so far all these technologies remain just projects, the appearance of which is expected not earlier than 10 years. In addition, there's no doubt that the FAXX, as a combat unit, will be designed and developed so that it can be used extremely effectively in combination with the secret revolutionary Nemesis electronic warfare system. This technology should effectively render enemy radars useless. For years, the Navy has been developing and integrating several types of drones, ship and submarine systems, countermeasures in electronic warfare, and communications technology that will allow it to project, in effect, phantom fleets of aircraft and ships and submarines onto enemy radars. These realistic-looking decoys are capable of appearing seamlessly on disparate and geographically separated enemy sensor systems, both above and below the ocean surface. As a result, this networked and cooperative concept of electronic warfare will completely confuse the enemy. He will not understand where to expect the new strike from, as well as what kind of equipment is in this or that direction, in what quantity, and whether it is there at all in reality. Nemesis will provide a transition from traditional electronic warfare tactics, in which a few REBs perform individual electronic attacks on a few enemy sensors, to achieve mostly individual or local effects, to a very diverse set of networked electronic warfare systems. Now all REB assets and drones will operate in a coordinated manner, jointly conducting electronic attacks on huge sections of the enemy's sensor network. This network can extend over long distances, in several completely different battlefields. As more nations develop and refine their advanced integrated sensor networks, Nemesis will become increasingly important to the defense of US troops and their allies. It will be able to provide a tremendous advantage by providing the ability to directly manipulate what the enemy will see on the battlefield. Nemesis could blind certain parts of the locator networks, tamper with data, and force the enemy to fire expensive ammunition at ghosts at sea, and in the air, or even at his troops. And importantly, this would be done in full synchronization with actual attacks, carried out by manned vehicles and drones, including unmanned versions of the FAXX, and bombers controlled by artificial intelligence. Thus, the loss of live pilots is significantly reduced, and as a consequence, the cost of combat operations is reduced, since the cost of training one Air Force pilot, depending on the aircraft model, is $5 to $10 million US. In general, plans for the creation of a sixth-generation aircraft for the US Navy look promising. The FAXX is supposed to be a completely new aircraft, combining the functions of a strike fighter and reconnaissance aircraft. The use of innovative means of communication as well as powerful weapons will allow it to conduct air combat according to new rules, and I'd love to see what happens. What do you think of the FAXX? As always, I'm waiting for your answers in the comments below this video. Likes and subscriptions are also welcome.
Powerful modern aviation allows solving various tasks on the battlefield, ensuring the achievement of operational, tactical, and strategic goals. Washington understands this as no one else, and therefore for many years has been trying to maintain its superiority in the sky. The US now has a total of 3,511 combat aircraft, which by the way is 2.5 times more than Russia. This country is the only owner of 2 fighters of the 5th generation, and what is also important is actively working on the machine of the next generation. In addition, it is the American aircraft that are the most exported in the world. Today, we will talk about how successful the Raptor and Lightning II were, what to expect from the 6th generation, and what the future holds for American aviation in general. This is Black Widow. Let's go! By 2030, the US Air Force fleet will undergo dramatic changes, reducing diversity, speeding up upgrades, and short-term reductions in procurement. That's the new military strategy. The Chief of Staff, General Charles C. Brown Jr. said, "We're in a state of transition." He also talked about what military aviation should become in the next decade. According to preliminary plans, the US Air Force will reduce the composition of its fleet from 7 types of fighters to 4+1. But what kind of aircraft are we talking about? They will include the familiar 4th generation models F-15 and F-16. The first, namely the F-15EX, is an upgrade of the outdated F-15C, with a higher speed and payload. The second is a versatile model with excellent flight hackles, and at the same time the most popular fighter in America. Note that both airships are low cost and easy to operate. Another interesting specimen that made the tacit list is the A-10, or the Beard Fighter. Its numbers, of course, will be reduced from 281 to 218 units. The remainder will receive new equipment and wings, which will keep them in service until the mid-2030s. The backbone of the U.S. Air Force fleet will be the F-35A, 220 of which are to enter service within the next 5 years. The Lockheed Martin project is equipped with the most powerful AFAR, active phased array radar, and a wide range of weapons, including cannon and nuclear shells. Although the speed of procurement still depends on the readiness of the Block 4 program. This begs the question, what about the F-22? Has it been forgotten? The Raptor will not join the ranks of the aviation of the future. The reason for this is that the fighter's price is too high. In addition, considered a cutting-edge novelty in the 2000s, it is now at times inferior to its fourth-generation counterparts. The plane cannot fly at minimum altitude, in automatic terrain avoidance mode, and its radar is not capable of mapping the terrain. In today's environment with the advent of air defense systems like the S-400 and S-500, the need for these modes is very noticeable. In addition, the F-22 is only capable of attacking targets with pre-installed coordinates. The Raptor fleet itself is rather small. Initially, it was planned to produce 750 aircraft. However, in the end, only 187 rolled off the assembly line. Contractor Lockheed Martin suggested upgrading the fighters, adding equipment and sensors, similar to those installed on the F-35, and also to improve the hull coating. But so far, all the improvements remain only on paper. No other major upgrades of the F-22 are expected. According to the plan, it will serve its 25-year life, and in the 2030s, it will be gradually removed from active service. Unfortunately, the plane's owner's thought was neither yours nor ours, i.e. they also didn't export the sample, although several countries including Israel, Japan, and Australia were interested in buying this model. However, the government imposed a ban on sales of F-22, due to fears that the unique developments could be stolen. The reason for such doubts was the situation with the Chinese J-10, which bears a striking resemblance to the American F-16. Washington did not seriously focus on the Raptor, and instead preferred to place a bet on the next-generation fighter, Next-Generation Air Dominance, NGAD, using digital technology and the ability to fly unmanned. This project is being developed according to a new strategy, using digital design and computer modeling. These innovations have solved the problem of excessively long work on each new design. For example, 15 years passed from the moment of the first flight of F-22 up to its introduction into the Air Force. The NGAD will be produced in small batches of brand new modifications every 5 to 10 years. As for the rest of the aircraft, about 44% of the U.S. Air Force fleet now flies with expired service life. Soon the tired F-16C/D, C-130H, and early model UAVs, RQ-4A Block 30, will get a well-deserved retirement. Already by 2026, Washington plans to write off 421 fighters and replace them with just 304 new ones, resulting in a net reduction of 117 aircraft, the largest reduction in the Air Force since the early 2010s. Writing off 201 aircraft and unmanned aerial vehicles should save the country $1.37 billion. All of the money raised will be used to develop new projects and modernize the existing ones. Thus, the U.S. Air Force is finding a balance between today's modern requirements and those of the future. They actively invest in the modernization of already existing and time-proven vehicles of the fourth generation, and slowly but surely develop fundamentally new technologies such as NGAD. As for the F-22 and F-35, the choice was made in favor of economy, simplicity, and convenience, which the slow Lightning II has. And Raptor became an intermediate link, which certainly contributed to the development of national aviation, but did not get air supremacy. Nevertheless, the Air Force continues to work to improve the performance and retain the potential of the F-22, until it is finally decommissioned and replaced in service by more modern models. And so in early 2022, the vehicle was spotted in the sky over Edwards Air Force Base, with hidden underwing units. Eyewitnesses noticed unusual covers hanging from the suspension units under the wing of the Raptor. This confirms that the modernization program of the fighter continues. It is assumed that despite the high cost, the use of fighters already produced and taken into service will continue until the 2030s. Components such as suspended missiles or large external fuel tanks change the silhouette of the machine and its shape, so they make the vehicle more visible. But in this case, engineers agree that it makes sense to sacrifice a little in visibility of the model to make it more survivable, deadly, and relevant to modern threats. For the same purpose, they're thinking to start putting a special mirror coating on the hull of the vehicle. This will make it easier to detect the fighter with the naked eye and some types of radar, but it will significantly reduce the distance from which it can be fixed by innovative infrared sensors. These detectors on the modern battlefield are becoming a serious threat to all types of aircraft, especially invisible aircraft. And earlier, the F-22 continued to install IRST infrared tracking and search sensors, significantly improving its ability to detect enemy aircraft at long distances, while maintaining its stealth. These sensors are invulnerable to modern means of electronic warfare. The decision was made as part of the Small Business Innovation Research (SBIR) program. According to SBIR, in addition to infrared sensors, Raptor is to be equipped with enhanced cyber intrusion detection and prevention systems, as well as diagnostic maintenance, synthetic data generation, sensor fusion, improved target detection, radar, manned and unmanned service interaction modules, advanced autopilot and navigation systems alternative to GPS, Scorpion helmet-mounted display, Red Air threat replication application, optimized interception, new real-time data collection, and processing system. That's why this model is still the most advanced in the world. In the next decade, the aircraft I mentioned will be joined by unmanned aerial vehicles, in the creation of which America also has an advantage. And because of this, the superiority of the U.S. Air Force on the world stage will be maintained. What do you think of American aviation and its development strategy? Hurry up and leave your comments below the video. Like it and don't forget to subscribe.
The United States have been working to create modern multi-role aircraft capable of flying at supersonic speeds for decades. However, the creation of advanced airships has not always been a priority. So, in the 60s of the last century, the Soviet Army presented a new armored weapon to the world, among which are the well-known T-62 and T-64, as well as the 23mm self-propelled air defense gun Shilka. In addition, the 12.7mm DSHK machine guns, a favorite of the Vietnamese guerrillas, could stand up well to the American Trojans, T-28, designed specifically for war in this region. All these technical innovations forced Washington to reconsider its course and begin to develop a low-cost attack aircraft capable of effectively countering the ground threat. Thus, the idea of creating one of the most famous American ground attack aircraft of the 20th century was born, Thunderbolt II, which we will talk about today. The A-10 Thunderbolt II is a single-seat jet aircraft whose main task was to provide air support for ground troops, both in local wars and in the big war in the European theater of war. It was named after one of the most successful fighters of World War II, the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, though pilots affectionately call it Beardface. The history of its creation begins more than half a century ago, together with the launch of the AX program, Attack Experimental. During this program, only Northrop and the Fairchild Republic were chosen out of 21 aircraft companies, each of which presented its prototype. Both machines were then tested, in which each flew more than 100 hours and fired about 20,000 rounds. During the testing, it turned out that the Northrop sample, called the YA-9A, was lighter, more maneuverable, had a high-position wing, and engines by Lycoming engines. The second project, called YA-10A, on the contrary, had a low-lying wing and flared vertical tail, and engines for it were provided by General Electric. It differed from its competitor by having a larger fuel tank and simpler maintenance. In terms of combat survivability, it was about on par with both attack aircraft. Although many experts were leaning towards the first competitor, in 1973 the Project Fairchild Republic was declared the winner, receiving a contract to develop 10 pre-production units at a total cost of $159 million. The prototype series was later reduced to 6 units, which were launched just 2 years later. The model was produced until 1984, after which it underwent various modifications and improvements. During this time, 715 planes rolled off the assembly line, of which today, 283 C modification units remain in service. The cost of one is estimated at $18 to $19 million. The aircraft is 16.5 meters long and has a wingspan of 17.5. It was made according to the classical aerodynamic scheme, has a 3-spar wing consisting of a rectangular center section, in which were the fuel tanks and 2 trapezoidal consoles. The wingtips were bent downward, which increased the flight range by 8%. The semi-monocoque fuselage was made of aluminum alloys, which were noted for their high corrosion resistance. An important feature is its high survivability. According to the designer's claims, it could fully function if 2 spars were damaged, and retain flight control if one of the keels or one of the stabilizer consoles was lost. Such reliability is due to the use of 1.5 inches of titanium armor, armored windshield, and the cockpit in the form of a bath made of titanium armor plates. Thanks to the use of these innovations, the attack aircraft is capable of withstanding a 23mm Shilka missile hit. Thunderbolt II has a 3-pillar undercarriage with a front strut that allows for takeoff and landing, even on-field airfields. and the wheels, which protrude 1/3 of the nacelle outline, facilitate emergency landings when the landing gear is retracted. Initially, the Bearden could not boast of powerful equipment. It had primitive barometric altimeters, an old-generation radar warning station, ANALR-46, and other standard sensors. However, as enemy systems improved, so did the modernization of our hero. It was supplemented with such innovations as an inertial navigation system, ASN-141, providing operation in difficult weather conditions, radio altimeter APN-194, short-range and long-range navigation radio systems, TACAN and LORAN, direction finder, DF301EDA, modern radios, Type 618M, and more. Among other things, the PAVE penny system was installed, which could detect targets illuminated by a laser mounted on the ground or other aircraft at a distance of up to 24 kilometers. However, it lasted about 10 years and then was dismantled. Twice, the designers tried to introduce into the attack aircraft a lantern container optoelectric navigation and targeting system, which would ensure flight at extremely low altitudes under night conditions. But this idea turned out to be too expensive and complicated. In addition, the cockpit was equipped with an ACES-2 ejection seat, which allowed leaving the aircraft even at 0 speed and altitude. The designers did not stop here, and in the 70s tried to implement the idea of a night all-weather attack aircraft. This model was to be equipped with a new airborne radar and a weather radar station. It was capable of performing such tasks as mapping, detecting small ground targets, and flying in terrain avoidance mode. Of course, in addition, there was a whole set of sensors and indicators. Another important difference was the presence of a co-pilot seat. However, these ambitious plans remained at the level of the project, and as an all-weather aircraft chose a more powerful F-15 and F-16. In the 90s, another modification of the attack aircraft appeared, designated as OA-10A, designed for advanced air guidance and search and rescue missions. And in 2006, the developers gave the already exhausted machine a second life, and the letter C on the end. The model received upgraded avionics, HOTAS technology, and a reinforced wing design. The last unmanned modification is called the A-10 and is currently under development. Warthog was able to reach speeds of around 850 kilometers per hour and climb to heights above 13,500 meters. 2 turbojet engines, TF-34GE100, of well-known General Electric company, provided such performances. Interestingly, they were installed under a new scheme, in which each was placed in a separate nacelle on the sides of the tail section of the fuselage. This scheme has several advantages, including reduced radar and thermal signature, reduced likelihood of foreign objects entering the air intake, plus more convenient maintenance. The Thunderbolt II can rightly be called one of the most powerful attack aircraft of the 20th century. 11 weapon mounting points carry guided air-to-surface missiles, Maverick with television targeting, AGM-65A, or self-defense AIM-9 Sidewinder. The Beardmaker can carry various types of bombs, such as the free-fall Mark 82 and Mark 84, or incendiary Blue 16 bombs. Different series of CBU bombs, 52, 58, and 71, are also possible. But the main advantage of the A-10 is the 30mm 7-gun GAU-8A Avenger, which was installed in 1970. It had a rate of fire of 4,000 rounds per minute and a maximum allowable rate of 10 2-second bursts, with a 1-minute air cooling in between. The gun is externally hydraulically powered and has a no-spring ammunition feeding system. The use of aluminum ammunition pellets increased the ammunition capacity by 30%, 1,350 rounds. With such an arsenal, the attack aircraft can attack a tank at 100 to 150 meters, from a distance of 1,800 meters, and unarmored targets from twice as far away. As for combat experience, the Bearded was able to prove itself during the Persian Gulf War. According to American pilots, these machines destroyed more than 1,000 Iraqi tanks, 2,000 other pieces of military equipment, and 1,200 pieces of artillery. Not only did they show the ability to stand up to enemy tanks and smaller armored vehicles, but they were also able to perform unconventional tasks. For example, it was these aircraft that were able to destroy a mobile Scud missile launcher that the Heavy Strike Eagle, F-15E, and Aardvark, F-111, were after for a long time. In addition, one of these ships engaged in a battle with a Soviet Mi-8 helicopter and managed to win. This is not the only operation in which our hero was used. Subsequently, Thunderbolt II flew over the skies of Yugoslavia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. This plane became popular. It is him you can see in the movies Titanic or Transformers. What's noteworthy, the latter even created a special character, Wingblade, who could transform into Thunderbolt II, and on its basis later released a toy. But despite its widespread popularity, the plane is in service only in its homeland. Of course, in the early years, many countries were interested in it, such as England, Norway, and South Korea. In addition, Washington planned to send a batch of specially developed A-10s to Latin America. They were to be used there to combat drug trafficking. However, foreign interest in the development rather quickly subsided due to the reluctance of countries to buy highly specialized aircraft, and even at a decent price. In conclusion, we would like to add that the A-10 was one of the most reliable planes of its time. It is amazing that even after so many years it is still in service. I will be very interested to see what machine will replace this old man. And what about you? I'm waiting for your answers in the comments below this video. As usual, do not forget to like and subscribe. There are a lot of interesting reviews. Mats Helgesson, the commander of the Swedish Air Force, said that the Gripen E fighter created by the Saab concern is capable of destroying Russian Su-series aircraft. Is it bravado or an accurate assessment of the combat qualities of the Swedish aircraft? The main weapon of Gripen is the adequacy of its creators, the art of cutting off obviously impossible requirements, focusing on real tasks and opportunities. Who said that in order to destroy the deadly Russian Su fighters because of their super maneuverability, stealth technologies are required? Insanely expensive, making the plane worth its weight in gold. And insanely complex as well, which is why stealth planes spend most of their time on the ground. And the Swedes decided to go their own way when creating their Gripen E aircraft. In this video, we will tell you what this path chose, and why the arrogant Russia should worry about it. The ancestor of the family, Gripen A, or rather Saab JAS-39A Gripen, began to be mass-produced in 1996. JAS is an abbreviation for Jacked Fighter, Attack Aircraft, Spaining, Reconnaissance. It was a light multi-role fighter, easy to maintain and very reliable. In 30 years of operation, only one person died while piloting it. The Swedish fighter has the lowest accident rate among its peers. Another of its advantages is it can take off and land on short runways, and even just on a highway. For hilly and wooded Sweden with hundreds of lakes, finding enough space for military airfields is a big problem. And the existing ones, as the Swedish military sensibly reasoned, would be quickly destroyed in the event of war. But this aircraft was clearly outdated by the beginning of the second decade of the 21st century. The first F-22 Raptor stealth fighter was already plowing the sky. And most importantly, the Russians had the formidable Su-30 and Su-35 with a variable thrust vector, which allowed them to be very nimble in battle. You could no longer oppose them with the old fighters of the fourth generation. Of course, one could simply buy a NATO aircraft, the same F-35 as other countries of the alliance did. But a country with a military budget of $6.5 billion, even less than Thailand's, decided to have its own modern fighter jet. Moreover, the Swedish military and designers had their own view of what a modern fighter should look like. According to the generally accepted concept, the fourth generation of fighter aviation should be followed by the fifth, with a prescribed set of certain qualities: stealth, supersonic cruising speed, new-style avionics, and all this while maintaining the high maneuverability characteristic of Generation 4. And the only possible solution to meet these goals is the American F-22 Raptor, or something like it. But Saab designers have their own opinion on this issue. The Swedes believe that the established set of characteristics for the fifth generation, as well as its technical features, are just ways to achieve the goal. What is the main task of a modern fighter? Survive over the battlefield and win. Hiding in the hope of going unnoticed by the enemy, according to the proud descendants of the Vikings, is not the most effective choice. When creating the Gripen E fighter, the complex parameter survivability was put at the forefront, combining the situational awareness of the pilot with the ability to counter various threats. Be the first to spot danger, bypass the ambush, launch anti-missile defense in time, confuse the enemy, suppress missile homing heads with active jamming. Ideally, use weapons from the maximum distance without the need to approach the target. Here are the principles that were taken as the basis for the development of Gripen E. The plane turned out to be so outstanding that they even wanted to give it its own name in order to distinguish it from the family of steel Swedish Griffins, which began to enter service with the country from the mid-90s. Gripen is translated from Swedish as a griffin, a mythological winged creature with the body of a lion and the head of an eagle, which has sharp claws and unites heaven and earth, good and evil. So what is the Gripen E? The aircraft is made of the duck scheme, which has already become a classic for fighters, with a mid-range delta wing. The airframe of the aircraft was created considering the reduction of radar visibility. 30% of the hull is made of composites. The mythological griffin has very sharp claws. The designers of Gripen E made sure that their offspring had claws like a razor. To do this, they brought the number of weapon attachment points to 10, and it can carry missiles of the most diverse types, including those not even produced by NATO countries. The main weapons of the aircraft are MBDA Meteor long-range missiles and IRIS-T short-range missiles. The Meteor missile is equipped with a ramjet engine and has a speed of Mach 4 and a range of over 100 kilometers. At the same time, unlike the French Rafales, the Swedish Gripen uses a more advanced Meteor modification with a two-way data exchange channel. The IRIS-T missile, thanks to a sensitive homing head and the ability to perform maneuvers with a 60-fold overload, makes it possible to intercept small targets, including anti-aircraft missiles and air-to-air missiles fired by the enemy. Considering that Russian Su fighters can maneuver with G-forces up to 8 Gs, they will have a hard time in close combat with Gripen. Almost an 8-fold advantage. No maneuver will save the Russian plane. But of course, effective missiles are not the only advantage of this Swedish aircraft against the Russians. Equipped with the modern electronic equipment, Gripen E provides its pilot with situational awareness at the level of 5th-generation fighters. This is achieved through the application of the following key components. Radar ES-05 Ravon with a FAR, providing the pilot with a larger viewing angle. The radar is installed with the possibility of rotation. Thanks to this, aside from the front view, the pilot can also backward, and to the left or right. This is a huge advantage in the case of air combat outside the line of sight to the enemy, or when the enemy has a strong air defense, and it is dangerous to enter the area of its operation. Also, the aircraft is equipped with an all-angle skyward G electron-optical detection system operating in the thermal range. Its analog is installed on the 5th-generation F-35 aircraft. Another component inherent in the 5th-generation fighters is a network-centric data exchange system that allows Gripen pilots to monitor the status of other aircraft in their combat group. The status of weapons, the amount of fuel, warning of detected threats, the distribution of targets in battle. This system allows a new tactic to be applied when one aircraft in a group is active. That is, it has a radar and it detects targets. Other aircraft of the group are passive, which drastically reduces the possibility of their detection. At the same time, they can direct their missiles at the targets detected by the active aircraft, thanks to the exchange of data. Also, Gripen E can fully operate in conjunction with not just other similar aircraft, but also with other vehicles of NATO members in the air, on land, and at sea. Artificial intelligence is integrated into the aircraft control system, which along with a widescreen display, facilitates the pilot's decision-making process and provides decisive assistance during operations. Artificial intelligence presents information in a form convenient for the pilot, which makes it much easier for him to solve the tasks of selecting, aiming, and launching weapons, with maximum coordination, with other members of the Tactical Aviation Unit. In other words, if the artificial intelligence considers that one Meteor rocket is enough for a certain purpose, then one aircraft from the unit will launch it. Other aircraft will destroy other targets. 2 planes will not hit the same target. Another strong trump card of the Swedish fighter is the electronic warfare system. You can list its technical parameters for a long time. Power, which frequencies it uses, and so on. But we better cite one interesting fact. During the exercises, Gripen E managed to quietly land on the right wing of the German Typhoon fighter, all thanks to the electronic warfare system, which suppressed the detection sensors installed on the Typhoon. Of course, in a real battle, no one would land on the wing, but simply destroy the enemy with rockets point blank. Gripen E designers have managed to bring to life another very useful innovation. While developing aircraft avionics, they managed to separate the software necessary for the operation of various systems from the software that is critical for the flight. This makes a simple update of the necessary software possible, without the need for recertification, as Gripen E systems are upgraded. And this in turn dramatically reduces the cost of operating the machine over its entire service life. Also, this solution allows countries that operate the Gripen E to flexibly customize the aircraft's avionics to suit their needs. The developer says that the Gripen E allows users to fight on the first day of the conflict, learn and adapt software applications to provide a combat advantage on the second day. The new Gripen is heavier than its predecessor, the Gripen JAS-39A. Its takeoff weight is 16 tons, but it can carry 40% more fuel. The increase in weight did not affect the dynamic qualities of the aircraft, since it has a different engine. Gripen E uses an American-made F414 engine, GE39E modification. The F414 is considered a new development based on the YF120 engine, which was created for the 5th-generation YF-23 fighter. It was a rival to the YF-22, which then evolved into the F-22 Raptor. But according to experts, the engine for the YF-23 is superior to the F-22 engine. Compared with its predecessor F404, the pressure ratio of the F414 compressor has been increased from 25 to 30, and the engine thrust has increased by 30%. In afterburner mode, the Gripen E engine creates a thrust of about 6 tons, and on afterburner, all 10, with the engine's own weight being around 1 ton. No plane had such parameters a quarter of a century ago. And in terms of the ratio of specific thrust to air consumption, even today it is the absolute world record holder. Thanks to the F414, the Gripen E cruising speed in non-afterburner mode exceeds the speed of sound and is 1.1 million. Obviously, the Swedes see no problem in using American engines. Sanctions and embargoes do not threaten them. Otherwise, these are the best engines for combat aircraft on the world market. But if the new Gripen E differs sharply in its combat capabilities from its predecessors in the Griffin family, then in terms of ease of operation, it inherited proprietary features. The Gripen E can operate in extreme climates and from dispersed and unprepared road bases or airstrips. It takes less than 20 minutes with limited ground personnel and equipment to refuel and re-equip the Gripen for airborne flight, allowing for rapid re-engagement. With low maintenance requirements per flight hour, the Gripen E spends less time on the ground and more time in the air. We do not yet have data on the cost of 1 hour of flight for the Gripen E, but for example, the same figure for its predecessor, the Gripen JAS-39A, is $4,700, which is half that of its closest competitor, the single-engine F-16. So here's a Swedish hello to Russia. Proud Vikings will oppose the Su fighters with artificial intelligence, powerful and fast missiles, instant and accurate coordination with their other aircraft and other weapons, thanks to a network-centric data exchange system, a stunning electronic warfare system, the ability to quickly adapt avionics to the current situation, and quick preparation for flights. While the Russian Su-35 or Su-57 will make 1 sortie, the Swedish nimble but painfully stinging fighter will perform 3. To date, 96 new Griffins have already been ordered, 60 ordered by the armed forces of Sweden, and 36 by Brazil. Despite the fact that Gripen E was born in an era when stealth fighters are spreading around the world, it offers its own solution to the problem of conquering the sky, at a much lower cost. Yes, against the background of massive twin-engine Su, the Swedish fighter does not look very convincing, but we have shown you that this is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and who will be stronger in battle will only be seen in battle. One thing is clear, the Russians need to take the Gripen E very seriously.
It is increasingly clear in the world today that the most reliable defender of a country is its army, not any treaties or alliances. For Japan, separated from 1.5 billion strong China by just the Sea of Japan, and with which it has historically had very difficult relations, the issue of having a combat-ready military is becoming more and more relevant every year. One of the ways to solve this problem is to create a super modern fighter to withstand the Chinese armada of more than 3,000 aircraft, most of which belong to the 4+ and 4++ generation, the J-10 and J-11B fighters, and there are already some 5th generation machines, the J-20. The ratio of Chinese to Japanese combat aircraft is simply appalling for the Japanese, 6-1. What does the land of the rising sun intend to counter this real threat? What kind of aircraft does Japan intend to build? Let's look into it. The main combat aircraft of the Japanese armed forces is the F-2 bomber fighter, which is a joint development of the Japanese company Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, MHI, and American Lockheed Martin. The F-2 is a heavily revised version of the F-16. The planes even have slightly different silhouettes. The Japanese are slightly larger than the Americans. Japan has a total of 97 F-2 fighters and about 200 even older F-15J fighters. Initially, Japan planned to replace the aging F-2 Generation 4+ aircraft with the American Predators, the 5th generation F-22. But it turned out that adding another 2 in the name of the aircraft model would not work. In 1997, the US Congress decided not to export the F-22 Raptor. Despite great interest from Japan, the technology used in this fighter, the first of its generation, was deemed too important. And then, the Predator has withdrawn from production altogether. Japan decided to develop its 5th generation fighter. This led to the birth of the experimental X-2 Shinshin. Despite a successful first flight in 2016, the project was deemed too expensive. Then Lockheed Martin offered the Japanese Defense Ministry a very extravagant solution: to combine the F-35 Lightning II and F-22 Raptor designs into one aircraft. The Japanese wisely declined this risky undertaking. Soberly assessing the situation, the Japanese, in our opinion, took an unexpected but the most correct decision: to abandon attempts to create a 5th generation fighter
and immediately create an aircraft of the next, 6th generation. And for the period when this super modern aircraft will be created, to cover themselves from China and North Korea with American Lightning, the F-35 aircraft. So in 2018, Japan sent out a request to buy 63 Lockheed Martin F-35A and 42 F-35B short takeoff and landing fighters, simultaneously with the commissioning of 2 Izumo-type helicopter carriers. It was decided to modify these ships, the largest in the Japanese Navy, to accommodate the F-35B fighters. The Japanese government has allocated $48 billion for the development of a 6th-generation fighter, which has already been named FX. At the same time, it is expected to produce 90 such aircraft. That is, the cost of one copy will be an astronomical $533 million, over $500 million for one plane. For that money, it's possible to buy 3 times as many F-35s, but the Japanese are going for such expenses, and they have good reasons for it. You need fewer pilots for 90 planes than for 270, and the Japanese armed forces are more strapped for manpower than money, and the figure of 270 scares them to more than $48 billion. Second, the money spent on FX will largely go to Japanese companies, and could turn Japan into a first-class military aerospace power that will no longer be dependent on American companies and export policies. And now about the Japanese fighter of the 6th generation. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries was naturally appointed as its leading developer. In all, more than 1,000 Japanese companies will participate in the project. It is assumed that the FX will be larger than the F-22. Therefore, it has already got the nickname Godzilla. The large size indicates that the Ministry of Defense wants the aircraft to have a very long range and a large payload. Compared to its predecessors, the FX will replace hydraulics with electric actuators. The reason for this decision is the complexity of the stealth fighter's cabin design. When designing stealth aircraft, the internal weapons compartment and air intakes have to be taken into account. However, problems arose with the installation of hydraulic system piping due to insufficient rigidity. The adoption of electric actuators eliminated the limitations, as they are connected only through electrical wiring. A reduction in the weight of the aircraft is also achieved. To reduce weight, several technologies and manufacturing methods will be implemented in the FX. In particular, abandoning the use of fasteners in favor of bonding composite materials. Aluminum alloys and carbon fiber reinforced polymer will be used to create a heat shield for the engine. The FX's predecessor, the F-2 fighter, used carbon fiber reinforced polymer only for the lower part of the wings. In the FX, the entire fuselage will be made of carbon fiber. To improve stealth aircraft detection, the FX will use an electronically scanned active grid radar. The aircraft will have a self-defense radio frequency system. It will instantly turn off its radio waves if necessary. If necessary, the radar will be able to operate in a microwave weapon mode, frying the electronics of approaching missiles. To increase stealth in addition to radio-absorbing materials, the FX will use stealth plasma antenna technology to deflect radio waves. The antenna works by creating a temporary plasma that can change its physical properties through electrical control. When activated, the antenna is also capable of transmitting and receiving messages. The FX will be powered by 2 XF-9 engines, which have yet to be developed. The officially announced thrust levels are 11 and 16.5 tons with the afterburner. This is slightly less than the F119 engines on the F-22 Raptor. At the same time, the FX will be heavier than the American, so it is likely to be inferior in speed and maneuverability characteristics. The engines will be equipped with nozzles with a 3-dimensional thrust vector, which allows the aircraft to achieve high maneuverability, not inferior to the Russian Su-57 and the same F-22. It is worth noting that in December 2021, the United Kingdom joined the development of an engine for a new Japanese fighter jet, which means that the resulting power unit may well be installed on new United Kingdom Air Force aircraft as well. According to the British Ministry of Defence, joint work on the project should begin in early 2022, after the country invested £30 million sterling in the planning and digital design of the device. On top of that, the British government is going to invest at least another £200 million in the engine. This investment is expected to help create a fully functional demonstration prototype engine, which will be manufactured at the Rolls-Royce plant in Bristol. The project also utilizes production facilities at BAE Systems, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, MHI, and Ishikawa-jima Harima Heavy Industries. No details of the expected performance of the product were reported, so it is unclear whether the Japanese FX will eventually be powered by the XF-9 engine. At the moment, Japan has one completed aircraft, X-2 Shinshin, which was to be used as a model to demonstrate some of the technology that was later to be used in the FX fighters. The experimental X-2 was equipped with IHI XF-5 turbofan units, and these were expected to be replaced by the XF-9 in the future. But now that IHI has partnered with Rolls-Royce, it has become unclear what role the authentic Japanese design will play in the project. It may serve as a technological basis for the joint project, or maybe something fundamentally new will be created as a result. It is known reliably that despite this cooperation, Japan continues to work on its FX program, but if it has access to a more efficient suitable engine, it may be installed in the 6th generation fighters. Another possible result of this business interaction could be the emergence of a new type of munition, namely the integration of an advanced radio frequency guidance head, developed in Japan, into British MBDA air-to-air missiles. Such weapons may be included in the arsenal of the new fighter. To date, the FX is expected to be armed with 6 ASM-3 anti-ship missiles, which will be placed inside the fuselage. The ASM-3 reaches speeds of over 3 Mach and hits targets at ranges of up to 400 kilometers, plus a microwave weapon mode at the radar. Each FX jet will be capable of flying up to 3 drones, which can be equipped with either reconnaissance equipment or missiles. The drones will improve the FX's offensive capabilities, while significantly reducing the vulnerability of the manned aircraft to enemy attacks. The aircraft will also possibly incorporate a high-speed data transmission technology called Integrated Fire Control for Fighters, IFCF, which could allow Japanese and possibly US fighters to combine their sensors, improving the accuracy of missiles beyond the line of sight. In developing such an ambitious project, Japan will be supported technically by Lockheed Martin in airframe design and system integration. The first will almost certainly include advice on radio absorption materials, as well as other techniques used by the firm to reduce the radar cross-section of its F-22 and F-35 fighters. Japan also hopes to pick Northrop Grumman's brains, especially regarding sensor and network warfare technology, which is widely used in the Grumman Super Hornet, the E-2D Advanced Hawkeye long-range radar detection and control aircraft, and the F-35 multi-sensor distributed aperture system. Tokyo has also stated a desire for input from the British company BAE Systems on the design, especially to interfere with electronic warfare and self-defense assets. BAE is the developer of the AN/ASQ-239 electronic warfare system for the F-35 Lightning. Japan plans to build the first FX prototype in 2024. The first flight will take place in 2028 and begin operation in 2035. As we can see, Tokyo proposed its vision of the 6th generation combat aircraft. Despite the rapid development of artificial intelligence, the Japanese see such a machine controlled by humans, but working in conjunction with several unmanned drones. But such technology is already being developed by the Russians for their 5th generation fighter Su-57. They've already tested a heavy drone Su-70 Hunter for it, and are going to supply it to the troops from 2024. Guided thrust vectoring has already been successfully implemented in the American F-22, and the Russian Su-35 and Su-30. So how then will the Japanese 6th generation fighter be fundamentally different from the existing 5th generation machines? So far, judging by the available information, the stealth of the aircraft will be significantly increased due to the fuselage made entirely of carbon fiber and the use of controlled plasma. Another significant innovation is the appearance of microwave weapons for protection against missiles, and that's about it. Don't you think that this is not enough to consider it a next generation airplane? What do you think? It would be interesting to know how the main players, the USA, China, and Russia, see the 6th generation combat aircraft. Write your thoughts in the post below this video. If you liked it, give it your likes, and of course don't forget to subscribe to our channel. There will be much more interesting stuff.